Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would like to call to order the July 11th, 2018 meeting of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Reverend Miller. Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Ms. Alvarez.
Here.
Chairman Irvine.
Here.
We have a quorum of 4 members of the committee present.
Thank you. Our first order of business today is approval of the committee minutes of June 13th, 2018. May I have a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez.
Yes.
Chairman Irvine.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 4 yes votes.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing an agreement with the University of Chicago for bus routes number 171 UFC Hyde Park, number 172 UFC Kenwood, and number 192 University of Chicago Hospital Express. And our presenter is Mike Conley.
Good morning. I'm Mike Conley, your Chief Planning Officer. Before you this morning is an ordinance which would authorize a 5-year agreement with the University of Chicago for subsidized public transit service operation of the bus routes 171, 172, and 192. This agreement would be in effect from September 1st of 2018 this year through August 31st of 2023. Renewal of this ongoing public-private agreement provides for the university to pay for the cost of operation of these routes minus the fares collected on all 3 of these routes. The hourly cost is set at $113 per hour for the first 3 years of the contract, with a 3% escalation in subsequent years. The revenue generated by this contract during fiscal year 2017 was just under $2.5 million. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Is this mostly for the students, or do the residents in Hyde Park use this as well?
It is set up really for the students, and that's why the university funds it, but all the residents are able to use it because it is a public bus route as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I can personally attest to the fact that, yes, residents in Hyde Park do use the service.
All right.
Yes.
Very good.
Okay. No further questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Thank you. Since there is no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend board approval of the omnibus?
So moved.
Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Reverend Miller. Yes. Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez.
Yes.
Chairman Irvine.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 4 yes votes.
Thank you. And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
All right.
You're fine, Kevin.
I would like to call to order the July 11th, 2018 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Reverend Miller. Ms. Alvarez.
Here.
Mr. Peterson. Mr. Youngblood.
Here.
Mr. Silva's in Moscow today, so he won't be here. Chairman Irvine, Vice Chairman Irvine.
Here.
We have a quorum with 5 members of the committee present.
Thank you. Our first order of business today is approval of the committee minutes of June 13th, 2018. May I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson. Ms. Alvarez.
Yes.
Chairman Irvine.
Yes.
The motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the finance report. Jeremy?
Good morning. I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be presenting the results for May. As we've seen over the past several months, we continue to see progress, particularly on passes, but let me focus on Farebox first. With regard to Farebox, we saw a slight downturn on a variance to budget basis. Again, what we've seen in the month of May, as you recall, was some bad weather, some very hot weather, rainy weather, so that affects cash riders in particular, as those are very discretionary trips that they're taking. So we saw a downturn to budget of about $700,000 for the month of May. For passes, however, we continue to see people shifting over from pay-per-use to passes as we have throughout the year. So this is, again, a good trend that continues. We saw 7-day passes up quite a bit, accounting for about 300,000 of the overall total. 30-day passes continue to be strong as well. They do tail off a little bit in the summer as just people's travel patterns are different. They're taking vacations. But again, we see continued strong performance on both 7-day and 30-day passes. So we remain excited about that. Overall, about $200,000 down to budget on a fare and pass total basis. Reduced fare reimbursement from the state remains at half of what we would expect. So that's about 1.2 million negative variance to budget. On non-fare box, we continue to be slightly outperforming on an advertising basis. However, we did see some underperformance with regard to the Build America bond subsidy. This was a program that was rolled out by the federal government that allowed us to get a subsidy back for the issuance of the Build America bonds. In 2011, they passed an act that went into effect in 2013 with regard to sequestration, which is a haircut on those federal subsidies to entities like the CTA that issued these bonds. That has been in effect since 2013. This year was supposed to be the first year that was not continued. However, the federal government in their budget implemented a last-minute change that did in fact extend the sequestration into this year, so the payments will again get hit, as we've seen in prior years. The program, as it was originally set up in 2011 and implemented in 2013, was supposed to run through 2021, but again, this year was supposed to be the year that was to be put on hold. So we'll again continue to look at the federal government with regard to sequestration in following years. But again, this is about over a $300,000 hit to the month of May that accounts for the debt payments associated with the first 5 months of the year. So that's an aggregate amount for those debt payments for the first 5 months through May of 2018. So that puts us in a position overall for revenues. We're down about 1.8 million to budget on a variance to budget basis. So again, we are hampered primarily due to the shortfalls that we received from the state on the reduced fare reimbursement and those BAB subsidy dollars as well. On a year-to-date basis, we see a similar trajectory. Fare box totals down slightly as people are shifting from paper use over to passes, but passes up about 2.7 for the year. So an overall aggregate number of about 1.5 million on a variance to budget basis for the year to date. Reduced fare reimbursement continues to get cut, so that's down about 6 million. And then non-fare box revenues, as we've talked about in the past, the advertising dollars for the first quarter were down, but we'll continue to see that rebound. But again, that drag that we see from the Build America bond federal subsidy continues to hamper us there. So overall, about $5.5 million down to on a variance to budget basis. We're continuing to.
So before
yes.
you move over to expenses, I'm not sure if you shared with the directors a recent Supreme Court ruling that would allow states to collect taxes from online shopping, because I think that's going to benefit us, and I'm not sure if you've shared that with them. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the Wayfair Supreme Court case that was recently settled will have a positive impact to the CTA's revenues on public funding. We continue to see, from this case, continued improvement in sales taxes to the tune for the CTA of about $1.5 to $2 million. The RTA-wide region will receive about 4 to 5 million, and again, we receive about 1.5 to 2 million of that total pie. The reason why it's not a bigger number is that it's only associated with the use tax portion of the overall sales tax from the state. So that's a 1.25% use tax, and we the RTA region receive 10% of that. So again, it's good news. And we hope to see continued improvement not only in that line, but overall sales tax lines as the Illinois economy continues to rev up here.
And this will be, as a result of this ruling, an ongoing revenue stream for us.
Absolutely. So this is, again, very exciting for us to continue to see improvements in our sales tax collections. This is a little different than what, just to kind of get a little bit into the specifics of the case. Previously, you only had to pay sales taxes as an online retailer if you had a brick and mortar store or distribution center in the state of where the sale was taking place. So even though like Amazon was not yet domiciled in Chicago, they did have a distribution center in the area. So online sales through Amazon did incur the sales tax collections. However, there's other platforms such as Wayfair and others that didn't necessarily have a distribution center in Illinois that now, due to this ruling, they still have to pay sales taxes even though they don't have that brick and mortar store or distribution center in the state.
Now, Jeremy, is that an annual amount or is that a prorated amount that we get?
That is what we estimate based on current projections for sales tax, but that will be an annual amount. And again, if sales taxes are coming in as expected, in future years, it would be in that neighborhood of about $1.5 to $2 million.
Does that have to be used for any particular purpose?
No, so our sales tax dollars go into our general fund, so they go to help the overall operations of the CTA. So with regard to expenses, we continue the efforts to tighten our belt with regard to expense controls. We see for the month of May, labor, is unfavorable to budget, but again, we did not take into account the ATU contract, as we have discussed in the past. We would be relatively flat to budget if that was taken into account. Materials, again, this is another line that is continue to be impacted by the state budget cuts because we don't have a state capital program. We continue to have to incur certain costs for our capital improvements, for our operations, and for bus and rail parts and things like that. So again, the material line ebbs and flows, but again, it does have an impact, a negative impact, because we don't have the state capital program in place since 2009. Fuel and power continue to be relatively flat, but slightly unfavorable. Again, the weather in May did have a slight negative impact. We run the air conditioners longer and harder during those seasons, where we have hot weather. So again, that has a draw on electrical power, on fuel. Provisions for injuries and damages and security services remain relatively flat to budget. And other expenses continue to be very favorable to the tune of about $4.2 million for the month of May. So that puts us as a favorable variance to budget on a net basis here for operating expenses of about $245,000. So that offsets a portion of the drag that we saw in revenues, but we still are in an unfavorable position to budget for the month of May of about $1.5 million. Again, the state haircut on reduced fare reimbursement is 1.2, and the sequestration haircut from the federal government is over $300,000. So if it wasn't for those two haircuts to those budget lines, we would have been flat, if not slightly better, for the month of May.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, I also want to point out another aspect of our budget that Jeremy's sort of hinting at in terms of his comments about the reduced fare subsidy. But on the subsidy side of our house, which is not an area of the budget that we necessarily spend a lot of time on, I think it's also important to remember that that is down from our budget expectation as well, both because of the budget that was passed this year, which continues certain haircuts in our PTF funding and our other funding, but also, when Jeremy talks about the material costs that we have here that we're incurring because we don't have a capital program, it's also important to remember that because we haven't had a capital program, CTA has had to issue debt in order to carry out our capital program needs. And that debt, the reimbursement of that debt is carried on the operating side of our budget. So we are being sort of doubly hit in the operating side of our budget because of both the lack of a capital program as well as the subsidy cuts that the state has implemented over the course of the past couple of years. And in spite of that, we continue to really work hard to control expenses and really keep our budget in alignment with the practical realities of what we're doing. So I just want to make that broader point around our budget because we spend a lot of time talking about just revenue and expenses. We don't really talk about the subsidy side of our budget, which actually represents half of the overall operating budget that we deal with.
Yeah. So, as President Carter highlighted, the public funding side, while economically sensitive taxes are performing basically at budgeted expectations, the state haircuts, at $55 million that we talked about as part of the budget for 2018, which represents about 7% of our overall public funding dollars, does continue to have a big concern for us as we move forward, throughout 2018 and then again into 2019.
The purchase of the security, that outside firm, that doesn't have to do with the sum of extra manpower.
Yes, so the security services are, the K-9 units and the like that are on the system. We also have, a contract with the Chicago Police Department for services on the system as well. With regard to year-to-date expense numbers, they continue on the same trajectory on the monthly basis, here on the annual basis. Labor down to budget, but again, if we factored in, on an apples-to-apples basis compared to where we were pre the ATU contract, we would be essentially flat, if not slightly up to budget there. Materials, again, slightly unfavorable, primarily due to the unfavorability that we see here in the month of May. Fuel and power essentially flat, to budget on those two line items, as well as for injuries and damages and security services. Other expenses continue to see strong outperformance to the tune of about $12.4 million. So we have about $2.4 million favorability on a year-to-date basis on our expenses. So on a net basis for the year, we see about $3 million unfavorability. So we'll continue to make efforts to whittle that number down as we move through the rest of 2018.
So Jeremy, let me, if you start to just do the math, this is a May forecast that you're sharing with us, so not forecasts, these are actual numbers. But if you start to do the math, we're about 3.1 million down, and this is just in May. I know why we continue to show the reduced fare subsidy, because we want to make sure that the state is aware of the fact that we're not letting them off the hook for the money they owe us.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is they've got a $38.5 billion budget. There are probably not going to be any changes under this administration to make us whole. And so in terms of us ever getting that money between now and the end of our fiscal year, which is December, it's slim to none. So just in terms of as you start to do the math, so that's 1.1 that we're going to run a deficit on. I'm just saying at the end of the day, and again, this is July the 11th, and you figure June is going to be similar, July, all of the months, so we're going to run a deficit of a little bit over 10 million at the end of the fiscal year. And again, we probably I should have just ended up doing the math straight out on this. And I want to get back to the sequestration. Is that a one-time hit for us in terms of the haircut that we're taking at the federal level?
So we've taken that hit since 2013.
Okay.
They had given indications last year as part of their budget process that they were going to hope to end that process of haircutting, particularly on the
Well, they
back
were going to
subsidy.
do a 2-year pause, right? It was going to be a 2-year pause, but it still had a sunset date of 2021.
Yes.
So what they decided to do instead, when they did the
Continue.
2-year budget agreement, they did a 2-year, 2018, 2019. They decided to leave the sequestration in place, but it still sunsets at 2021. So we can probably expect that 300,000 or whatever that number is from sequestration to continue, right?
Yes, I think from a conservative budgeting perspective, we would just go ahead and assume, despite noise that may come out, that would just continue through the 2021 timeframe.
Yeah, and the point that I think, Dorval raised about we're sort of getting hit twice at the state level, not having a capital budget, having to go out and borrow to continue on some of the capital needs that we have as an agency. I just think we need to share that more. And I see Brian in the back. We really do need to get out the news that we are really taking a double hit as it relates to the state and the inability for them to continue to support mass transit.
Absolutely. With regard to the three commodities that we purchase, fuel, power, and natural gas, we continue to be very closely following the oil market in particular for our fuel purchases. We've purchased just about everything that we need to in the 2018 timeframe. This is the 85% that we're at right now is slightly above our historical average of 80%. We'll continue to look for selective purchases, but we don't really want to go too much higher than that at this point. For 2019 volume, we continue to look for selective opportunities to purchase. The noise about tariffs and other issues with regard to sanctions on Iran and the continued turmoil in Venezuela continues to rock the oil market. So, we're slightly above kind of our average right now, but, as things kind of relax a little bit in the oil market, we'll continue to make purchases for 2019. And we're also starting to line up our targets for 2020. For power, we'll be bringing to the board in the coming months an extension with a new RFP for an energy provider so that we can start locking in 2020 and beyond electricity prices. Natural gas continues to be a strong performer, and we're already locking in 2020 and 2021 volumes on that commodity in particular.
Are there any other questions for Jeremy? Thank you, Jeremy. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing a co-promotional advertising trade agreement with Bank of America NA for the 2018 Bank of America Chicago Marathon. Jeremy?
Yes. Thank you. This is Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer. I'll be presenting for consideration a co-promotional agreement with Bank of America for the Chicago Marathon, which will be held on October 7th, 2018. This is the 18th year that the CTA has partnered with the organizers of the marathon to promote the event, and the CTA is providing a little under $22,000 of unsold advertising on buses and trains in exchange for $60,000 of promotional value from the marathon. This value to the CTA will include sponsorship recognition and the 150,000 spectator guides, our logo and link on 2 email newsletters to all participants, a booth at the Marathon's Health and Fitness Expo, as well as a link on the sponsor's webpage that will direct participants and spectators to buy their cards early through the website link. This year, this will be the second year of the ability to purchase fares in advance for the race on the marathon website. So we're excited about that. The promotion will allow CTA to reach an estimated 1.7 million people over the marathon weekend to encourage current CTA customers to use the CTA for non-work trips, but will also encourage tourists and new riders to use the CTA to follow runners along the race route with access to other marathon events. Glad to answer any questions that the board may have.
Jeremy, will there be some advertisement at the 2 airport terminals when people come in and they fly and they want to see how you get, to downtown, and first thing they should see is, CTA and Bank of America?
Absolutely. Those tables, those advertisings that we do at the airports have been very successful for us. we've sold about 4,800 tickets at the two airports last year, so a little under 5,000. Tickets were sold, in addition to people using the vending machines. We set up tables, like I said, at both airports to, again, accommodate the crowds, to answer more questions, because we know that these are people that are coming in internationally from around the country that may not be familiar with the system. So having the people there at the tables allows a little bit more interaction about, where do I need to go? What stop do I get off on? What type of ticket do I need? So again, this helps us provide better customer service to those customers as they come off the planes.
Jeremy, I have a related question. Has there been any discussion with aviation about having a CTA presence at the baggage claim versus just at the CTA station in the airports?
So,
I'm probably in a better position to answer that than Jeremy. The short answer is yes. I am pressing the Department of Aviation to expand CTA's footprint at both Midway and at O'Hare. As you know, we're very uniquely positioned in the country to have, direct transit service to both, international airports. And I think that it is something that we should be touting a whole lot more in the airport itself. We have had conversations, we continue to have conversations with them about improved signage as well as advertising that promotes CTA as an option to get to downtown Chicago. And hopefully, we'll start to see some progress on that. I know I certainly express my frustration every time I'm standing in a baggage claim about the lack of CTA knowledge around that area. And I have made a point and have talked personally to the commissioner about, can we find some ways to actually increase CTA's visibility up there?
Great. Thank you, President Carter. Thanks, Jeremy.
Something I heard on the news, I don't know if we thought about doing this, but it was all over the news this morning regarding the Taste of Chicago, that the Secretary of State's office was going to have a van over there that if you wanted to get your sticker, if you wanted to get license renewal or state ID, you could do it right there. And I don't know if we have a mobile van. I know we used to, because I've had them out in the neighborhoods. But one of the things that, I'm just even thinking about the Bank of America, setting up a mobile van where people are gathering large, even some of these neighborhood festivals. I know they close off Randolph almost from Halsted to Ashland, and I don't know if we ever take a mobile van and go out to these large community neighborhood festivals. They've got the Washington Park, African Fest, and all of that. You've got Bucks Bulletin Day, but I don't know I was curious as to, do we ever do any of those?
One of the things that I re-implemented, to your point, there was a time when CTA had a bus that would go to neighborhood festivals and events and would basically promote CTA and provide information and so on and so forth. At major special events, there are other things that we do with our Ventra partner to make it easier for people to get fare media and stuff like that. But we recently, last year, we reinstituted our community bus, which provides not only an opportunity to get CTA information and access to fare media and other things, but also provides an opportunity to charge your iPhones and other media as a way to basically encourage people to come visit us. Brian actually oversees that, the marketing and implementation of that, so I'll let Brian speak to your specific question about Bank of America and the other events we have coming up. But it is something that we've now added to our portfolio as a way to both educate people about CTA services, as well as provide an opportunity to obviously promote our fare media and other things.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Directors, Brian Steele, Vice President, Communications and Marketing. As President Carter mentioned, last year we did reintroduce the Community Connection Bus. We took a bus, basically gutted it, redid the interior to install video screens, a quick charging station for mobile devices, cabinets, and it's been a huge success. We deploy the Community Connection Bus to not only smaller neighborhood festivals, but also the larger festivals that occur in Grant Park and throughout the city. We actually debuted the season during Sunday's Pride Pride Parade. We had a very prominent location right near the actual parade route. Saw hundreds, if not thousands, of visitors that stopped by. We've actually worked with festival organizers who have been really excited and cooperative with us. We actually have locations inside the footprint of some festivals. For example, we were able to get inside the footprint of the Lollapalooza Festival for all 4 days. We also have a presence down at the at Pitchfork Festival at Union Park and numerous festivals throughout the year. We use the community bus for all manner of customer engagement. We market our pass and fare products. We tell a little bit about our history. We talk about transit benefits. We answer questions. And on occasion, as Jeremy referenced earlier, we will use it for remote fare sales. So we will continue to use that as a really successful outreach arm for CTA.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I think it's great we've got one, but with sometimes on Saturdays, you've got multiple things going on. So we probably need to look at some of our old buses, retrofitting some of those buses that we can take out. The other thing that I would suggest too, sometimes with some of our advertising partners, Apple, we probably need, partner up with folks. It's CTA/Apple or CTA/whoever some of our partners that are neighborhood friendly, whether it's Jewel or whatever. And I think again, because you've got on Saturdays, you've got the Taste going, you've got the Taste of Chicago going on, you've got the Bank of America thing going on, you've got multiple things going on, so it would be great to be able to have, to be in multiple places on a day to sort of capture all of the people who might have access or want to have access to learn more about transit. And I get back to the conversation we've had, Dover, about how do you get young people more excited about transit? The millennials and the Generation Z, and how do you get them more excited about transit? And I think it's one thing for us to be there, but great if we've got a partner that we're already doing business with or advertising with to maybe do something jointly sometime. Okay.
If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Chicago through its Department of Fleet and Facility Management, 2FM, for 2FM to maintain and repair certain authority non-revenue vehicles and lease space at the authority's Beverly Garage. Presenter Don Bonds and Jim D'Amico.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman
Morning.
and board members. We bring before you today a recommendation to extend a 5-year extension to the internal government agreement with the City of Chicago through its Department of Fleet and Facility Management for 2FM to maintain and repair CTA non-revenue vehicles and lease space at Beverly Garage. Through this IGA, the city's Fleet and Facility Maintenance Management Department, 2FM, provides fleet maintenance services for over 500 CTA-owned non-revenue vehicle assets, including heavy and light-duty vehicles, trailers, off-road equipment. Key pieces of equipment includes also snow plows, rec wagons, first responder vehicles, work vans, and supervision units. The city serves CTA at 6 maintenance locations throughout the city with 24-hour service. CTA non-revenue fleet supports all CTA operations. The IGA also includes a rental agreement which CTA leases space at Beverly Garage to FM for $9,164 per month. We recommend approving the agreement to extend the current agreement as amended for 5 years until 2023. 2FM charges CTA a labor rate of $115 per hour for work performed in-house by in-house 2FM mechanics. The 2FM labor rate of $115 per hour is in line with dealership services prices and is also in some cases lower than some of our heavy-duty dealerships that service. For example, Freeway Ford, a Ford truck repair vendor, charges $150 per hour. 2FM's monthly charge is about $140,000 per month, with an annual charge to maintain equipment at $1.6 per year. The rental of the CTA Beverly Garage leases over 34,000 square feet of space at Beverly, and CTA charges 2FM, as stated, $9,164 per month, and that includes utilities. The CTA Real Estate Department has ordered an appraisal of Beverly property to compare to the current rate. The appraisal value was close to the current rent, and the decision was made to not raise the rent, considering CTA uses much of the rented space for our own operations, including staff offices, CTA vehicles such as spares, new orders, and retired vehicles on auction. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay. May I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Chicago through its Department of Planning and Development for tax increment financing funds for improvements at the Wilson Station Red Line. Carol Morey?
Carol Morey, Chief Infrastructure Officer. So this item would amend the IGA with the City of Chicago for the Wilson Yard TIF funds to extend the completion date for the Wilson Station project. So in 2011, the city and the CTA entered into an IGA for the city to provide $3 million from the Wilson Yard TIF for renovations to Wilson Station. And subsequent to the adoption of the IGA in November of 2011, the mayor and the CTA president announced that funds had been secured for a complete reconstruction of Wilson Station. And so the IGA was amended in 2014 to reflect the change in project scope and extending the project completion date to January of 2017. CTA is now requesting an amendment to the IGA to reflect the actual completion date of the Wilson Station project, which included the renovation of the historic Gerber Building and the restoration of the clock tower. The actual completion date was January 10th, 2018. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Carol?
No, we're getting money.
$3 million.
Great. Since there are no questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
Second.
Thank you. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Our final order of business today is the review of 9 purchase and sales award recommendations, and our presenter is Ellen McCormick. Ellen? We will start with contract numbers A1 through A4. Do you have any questions?
So share a little bit with me about A1. So they're the previous contractor.
That's correct. They had been the previous contractor.
For how many years?
For how many years?
Yeah.
Since 2012.
Okay.
And so we did an IFB, and they were the lowest bidder. We did add a few things. We added some, over the years, we learned that we needed the vendor to provide additional services. We needed them to have someone who could provide electrical work along with the doors, and then some work with iron. So we added those positions to the spec, and again, overhead door was the winner. They were the lowest bidder.
Okay.
And that's 100% DBE?
It is. It's DBE owned.
Okay. If there's no further questions on A1 through A4, next will be contract numbers B1 and B2. Any questions? All right. If
Yeah,
there's no-
could
go
you
ahead.
talk a little bit about B1?
So B1 is the exercise of the first option under our mid-con contract. So back in 2016, when we awarded the contract, we awarded one base year and $30 million worth of projects. This contract is used for some of our smaller projects, less complex projects. We have a pre-qualified pool of 6 contractors which bid on these projects. So because of additional projects that have been added to our capital program, and in particular the Fast Tracks program, we're asking the board for an additional $30 million of authorization for the first option year.
And I want you to just share with the directors how this by approaching it this way, how it's really helped us too with our DBE numbers. Because I thought was one of the things during our briefing that I was really excited about.
Yes, so the difference in this contract, which is the first time we did this, is we started evaluating DBE goals by work order instead of putting an overall program goal. This allowed us to look at the individual scopes of the work orders and maximize DBE participation. So far, we have averaged a DBE goal of 31%, and the contractors have committed to an average of 33%. So we're seeing a higher DBE participation on this contract.
I just thought that was good news to share that, as opposed to, we used to do the jock contract. By doing it this way, it really helps us in terms of our DBE numbers and participation.
Yes, we're seeing higher DBE participation on these work orders, and the contractors had to submit diversity outreach plans, which required them to hold outreach events to meet new DBEs to bring them into CTA work. We are also holding outreach events where we bring all 6 mid-con contractors into the same room, so DBEs are able to meet and network with them. We have 2 planned for the rest of 2018.
So do you think it's because you're having more outreach for the individual, and being more specific about the contracts? Is that
Yes, it's a combination of 2. When we had JOC 10, we held some outreach events. These outreach that we're holding for MidCon are more specific to the work orders that are coming out. So we're working closely with infrastructure and purchasing to make sure that we're able to forecast what we're going to be procuring. And then when we're looking at the work orders on an individual basis, we're able to maximize DB opportunities as well.
Are you using any additional ways to communicate to those groups?
We're using the B2G system and email, and we're also using our assist agencies to make sure that as many DBs know about the opportunities as possible.
If I can further amplify on what CTA is doing in this regard, when I meet with DBE contracting organizations like HACIA and others, one of the things that they raised concerns about was the fact that many times primes will basically manipulate the contracts like this in terms of back-ending the DBE participation and doing other things that really don't give them a fair opportunity to participate in all the work that's being done. This was an idea that actually grew out of feedback that we got from the DBE community of how do we more focus our DBE expectations around individual task orders or work orders as opposed to just a generic overall goal. The other thing that it does is it puts us in a position to better monitor progress towards our expectations than getting to the end of a term and then looking back and saying, well, they didn't meet the goal, but there's really nothing I can do about it at this point because there isn't enough work, or the type of work we have to do isn't necessarily going to meet the DBE expectation that we place on an overall contract. And I think the final point I would make is that historically, because of the focus that the diversity team puts on each one of these work orders, we can be much more aggressive in our DBE goal expectations than the contractor might be on their own if they're basically left to figure out what they want to do in terms of DBE participation on a work order or task order by task order basis. So I think at the end of the day, this ends up being a win for CTA, and it's being a win for the DBE community, and it's one of the more innovative things that I've seen public agencies do as a way to really better monitor and ensure maximum DBE participation on the work that we're doing.
Also, actually, as a small business owner, increases the capability statement because you're able to put on there that you actually have done that, have had that specific experience and have been able to do that work.
Absolutely.
It's a huge deal. No, that's good.
I got a question. Do we have a list of the contractors that we currently use that continue to exceed our DBE goals that we set? And if so, is there like a best practice that they're doing that other contractors may fall short of, that like a mentoring program or maybe assist the DBEs to say, if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll be able to get more work in these areas? Because I think that's a critical part of improving our overall DBE goal, is to those contractors, if they're doing something consistently right to get work from CTA, that we can actually have a branch out to others to say, let's work in this community, let's work in this Hispanic community, let's work in the African American community, so they can consistently get jobs within those sectors.
Yes, the successful contractors are the ones that participate in our outreach programs, are the ones that approach the DBE goal not just as a requirement, but as an initiative within the company. We've shared those best practices with other contractors to make sure that everyone's doing as much as they can to reach out to the DBE community and maximize participation on each work order.
The other thing that we do, particularly with these types of contracts, is that as part of the evaluation process for the contractor themselves, we look at their outreach program. We determine what tools they're going to be using and how they're going to actually implement their program to meet our expectations. So it now plays an evaluative factor in our decisions about who we award these contracts to. So companies know that if they want to be in a position to get our business, they got to show us that they're going to be aggressive in engaging in the DB outreach and that they're going to produce results. We evaluate that as part of the RFP process.
Congratulations. I think it's a good
Great. If there are no further questions on B1 and B2, we've got contracts C1 and C2. Any questions? All right, if there's no questions on that, finally will be contract number F1. Any questions on F1? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place these 9 contracts on the omnibus for approval?
I'll second.
Since there's no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend board approval of the omnibus?
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Yes, Reverend Miller. Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Alias.
Yes.
Chairman Irvine.
Yes.
The motion to approve the omnibus passes with 5 yes votes.
Thank you. And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
I'd like to call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for July 11, 2018. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes, Reverend Miller. Ms. Irvine.
Here.
Ms. Alvarez-Alias.
Here.
Mr. Silva will not be here today. Mr. Youngblood.
Here.
Chairman Peterson.
Here.
We have a quorum of the board with 5 members present.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business today is public comment. Greg?
Yes, we have one public comment speaker. Ms., if I pronounce this, Alicia Ibarra. Would you please step to the front and speak right into the microphone? Yeah, right there is fine. And we request our speakers to try to limit their comments to 3 minutes or less. Thank you, Ms. Ibarra.
Yes, I would like to call in Ben Huey if he's here.
Well,
So
he
he
can
could sit
sit
next
with
to
you
me?
if he wants, but
Yes.
there's only one public comment speaker.
Yes, of course,
Per the
I will.
rules, but
Mhm.
if he wants to sit down, that's fine. I don't know. If Ben might not be, okay.
Yes, he is.
Sure, Ben can come on up and sit down with you.
Good morning. My name is Maria Alicia Ibarra, and I am a member of First Trinity Lutheran Church in Bridgeport, and I'm also a member of the Bridgeport Alliance. I was here 2 years ago in regards that we need the bus on 31st Street. The church is on 31st Street. The Bridgeport Alliance office is on 31st Street. I thought we were going to get a better deal of having a bus on Route 31st, but it's not working that well because you decided to give it different hours, from 10 to 7, Monday through Friday. That doesn't work for us. We have students, we have seniors like Ben Huey, And so many seniors, I just wish I could carry them in a school bus over here so that way you could see how many people we have in Bridgeport, so many daycares like senior citizen centers. It's amazing. It's a balance between daycares and senior citizens. And the problem is during the summer and also during the winter where they need to get to the hospital at Mercy or to other hospitals that could connect 31st Street bus. But the problem is it's too late. Their appointments is very early and they have to find a way to get there. So either they call the church, whoever is available, or we take them there. People who are not doing anything around the neighborhood. I'm well known around our neighborhood because I've been called everything. I've been called from the soup lady. I've been called the beautician to the homeless. And I also been called my daughter to our seniors because we have to take care of our seniors. We have to take care of our students. They need to get to class like my child and many children who are in Bridgeport. They start school very early. So the only bus that gets them to school is the Halsted bus. It doesn't make any sense. It really sets me down because seniors have all the right to enjoy life too, right? So we have a beautiful lake on 31st Street. They have no money to go anywhere where they could pay. And the beach there is free. The sundown is free. And they can't even do that. It's pretty sad. And it's also sad. The hardest thing that really gets to me is that sometimes their appointment is too early and they have to miss their appointment. You know how hard it is to get another appointment for them? Because the bus runs at 10 o'clock. That's not fair. What's not fair is also that you guys provided a survey a couple of years ago, and believe me, I did ask around the neighborhood in different communities like Canaryville, Brownsville, Pilsen, McKinley Park, Chinatown. And nobody saw these people doing any survey at all. Nothing. We do have the space if you decide to bring your own people to do the survey of what people, their needs are. And we have the space at our church. It's called the Community Center. And this place is amazing because we get to do many things with different communities. We provide clothing, a free clothing pantry. We have people from all the way from Hammond, Indiana. People from Pilsen, McKinley Park, Brownsville, Canaryville, even Humboldt Park. Different organizations that we are well known, so they could have a free clothing and a free meal. The other problem is we do have 3 food pantries, and the route on 31st, it's perfect. But again, it's 10 o'clock, and these people have to get to the food pantry to make lines, and it's like very difficult. So sometimes they don't even get to go to the food pantry. Do you think that's fair? I don't think that's fair, because you all are young still. You could get on the bus, you could get on your car and your bike and go grocery shopping. They can't. They can't. As you can see, Ben Huey is a volunteer at a food pantry, and he could barely walk. You've seen this. But he tries, and he's a very humble person, and he'll go out of his way to provide for all those people that need some type of food so they could eat. Again, I'm very disappointed. I'm very sad because you are young and you will become old one day. And I hope to God, I really hope to God that you have in your community this special bond that we have at First Trinity Lutheran Church in Bridgeport. And our pastor is Tom Galkey. And yes, he is a very radical pastor. And I consider myself a Lutheran and a very radical. And I will take off my coat and hand it over to you. If I ever see you on the streets and you ask me for any kind of help, believe me, I will be there to help you and provide whatever you need. And I just pray, I really pray that we get longer hours, at least 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock and Monday through Sunday, because our seniors, our low-income people, our homeless people, they have all the right to get to the hospital, to get to different communities where they could get some kind of help and for entertainment. What better place is the 31st Beach? So think about it. Go inside your heart and think about it. You're not that young. We're all getting old. Just, you have to give these people a voice, and that's what I'm trying to.
Thank you, Ms. Ibarra.
I just hope to God that your heart will melt and really think about the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate both of you and Ben coming down and sharing with us regarding 31st Street. Let me just say this, because you were here early when we went through the budget numbers.
Yes.
I mean, we get money to operate our services two ways, from our passengers and from the state
Right.
subsidy. And we're running deficits. And as much as I would love to be able to provide service from 7 in the morning till 10 at night, 7 days a week, the truth of the matter is it takes money to do that. And I would say that, it would be helpful to bring the same passion and advocacy that you bring before the board, also talking with elected officials in Springfield, where we get public subsidy from, because that's how we operate our system. There are only two sources of revenue, and either the ridership has to pay for it, or we've got to get the subsidy from the state. And so, again, we're all going to get old at some point. And I hear what you're saying. Doctor's appointment. My mom is 81 years of age. I know the difficulty of her getting to the store now, getting to her doctor's appointments now. So I can't thank you enough for coming down and sharing. The pastor's been here a number of times.
Yes.
And I know that you're just not saying what you're saying here, that you're saying it all over. But we continue to need more and more individuals to talk with the state about the need to support mass transit, because that's how we get our funding as well. And that, unfortunately, hasn't come through the way we hoped it would. And as was mentioned earlier by Jeremy, as he was going through the budget numbers, even with the passage of the 2018 budget at the state level, that was the 2019 budget that they just passed.
I
We
understand that.
accidentally got cut again. And, again, it's unfortunate, but, I've talked with Dorval about this, and I've talked with staff. We've got to start to raise the volume with those who are running for office and those who are in office, the importance of mass transit to support our seniors, to support others who depend upon transit to get around.
I have a question for you, Senor Peterson.
Yes.
I just heard a little while ago how you do this promotion on both Midway and O'Hare. Bridgeport has amazing restaurants,
Yep.
and we could get money in. We just have to make sure that you provide the information also that
I'm very familiar with
Yeah.
it. Before coming here, I was over the Housing Authority. We have a public housing development right there on 31st Street. So I'm very
Yes.
familiar with 31st. We've got senior buildings up and down there. You've got Wentworth Garden not far at 39th and State Street. But I just wanted to say, continue your advocacy, continue your passion for transit. We've just got to get individuals who give us funding to also understand the importance of providing us with that funding so that we can do the things that you just asked us to do, and that is extend hours and provide services, because at the end of the day, we do have to be able to pay for those services.
and I do understand. I guess I'm gonna have to go visit Browner at Springfield, right?
Whoever you have to. Start
I'll
with your
invite
state
him
rep,
over.
state senator, and on. Okay.
I'll
thank
get
you.
to the big shot, the big boss.
We did that once, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you so
We went
much.
to go see Lipinski, who's supposed to be
Well,
helping
he's
out.
he's at the federal level, and he helps us
Yeah.
a great deal with getting capital money. But
He practically gave us a slap in the face saying, I have to do what they tell me. Like he didn't care what we did. We went right to his house. We
Wow.
went to his office. He was never there. So then we made the next step. We went to his house
okay.
and
Well,
we caught him at home.
Keep up that advocacy. Keep
Thank
it
you.
up.
Oh, we
All right.
will.
All
We're
right.
not
Thank
going to
you.
back down.
Thank you so
Great.
much. Thank you.
Kevin knows me. He knows I won't back down.
Thank you.
You figure.
All right. Absolutely.
We never back down.
Keep it going.
That's
Keep
right.
it. Appreciate
Cubs
it.
rule.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Greg, I think you've got another comment.
Yes, Ms. Ibarra, you may want to,
Ms. Ibarra?
that's okay. Ms. Ibarra?
Greg, go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead. Let them.
All right, this is a letter from Alderman Pat Dow, which was delivered to Chairman Peterson yesterday on this matter. Dear Chairman Peterson, I write today on behalf of the many Third Ward residents who reside on and around 31st Street to oppose the extension of the 31st Street bus pilot program. This pilot has not shown sufficient ridership, and CTA's resources would be put to better use, strengthening other more viable routes like the 35th Street bus. There are three main reasons for the CTA to end the pilot. First, the 31st Street bus pilot has been given several extensions in order to show viability. However, ridership numbers remain very low. Second, 31st Street from the Dan Ryan Expressway to Lakeshore Drive is a one-lane road in each direction, which is unsuitable for bus travel as the frequent bus stops cause major congestion. Third, CTA's already limited resources could be better allocated to service more riders using the 35th Street bus, which makes stops at the heavily used CTA Green and Orange Line stations, as well as the 31st Street Beach. The 35th Street route is only 4 blocks away and is a much better avenue for investment, which will reach many more riders. In conclusion, thank you for the opportunity to submit these comments on behalf of my community. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me anytime. That's from Alderman Pat Dow, and that concludes the public comment section of today's meeting, Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Greg. The next order of business today is the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of June 13, 2018, regular board meeting. The minutes were previously distributed. Any comments? Hearing none, I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 13, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. We will now take up executive session matters. It is my understanding there will be executive session this morning, Karen.
Yes, Chairman, we will have executive session based on Section 2, Paragraph C, subparagraphs 5 and 11 of the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you, Karen. I now entertain a motion to recess into executive session based upon council's recommendation.
So moved.
Second. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
Motion to recess is approved with 5 yes votes.
All right. will now entertain a motion to return to open session.
So moved.
Second, Reverend Miller. Ms. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. I'd now like to address board item 4A, 4B, and 4C, the executive session items. Karen?
Surely, item 4A is a recommendation by staff to authorize payment of relocation expenses arising from the acquisition of parcel 9, which the board previously approved that acquisition for the red and purple modernization project. This is property located at 3330 to 3344 North Clark Street. The relocation amount that's being recommended for board approval is in the amount of $216,866, which will be payable to Gordon's Salon, which was the tenant at this particular location.
Thank you, Karen. I'll now entertain a motion to approve all 3 executive session board
Oh,
items.
I only covered the first one. Do you want me to cover all 3 of them?
Yeah, do all 3.
Okay. The second item to be voted on by the board is a recommendation to authorize the acquisition of property that's located at 3415 to 3419 North Clark Street for the red and purple modernization project, otherwise known as Parcel 15, which is previously designated by the board for acquisition for this project. This is an approximate 4191 square foot, 1-story commercial building on an irregular shaped lot. The property is owned by 3419 North Clark Street LLC. Staff is recommending acquisition of this parcel, and the CTA and the seller have agreed to a purchase price of $1,666,000. The third item is a recommendation to authorize the acquisition of property located at 3427 North Clark Street, again for the red and purple modernization project. This is known as Parcel 16B. It is owned by Chicago Title and Trust, number 19946. The CTA and the seller have agreed to a purchase price for 16B, which is an approximate 3,162 square foot surface parking lot on an irregular shaped lot for a purchase price of $1,160,000.
I will now entertain a motion to approve all 3 executive session board items, an ordinance authorizing payment of relocation expenses arising from the acquisition of property located at 3330 to 3344 North Clark Street, and 2 ordinances that authorize the acquisition of properties located at 3415 to 3419 and 3427 North Clark in Chicago, Illinois, for the red and purple modernization project.
So moved.
Second.
And seconded, Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Director Irvine.
Thanks, Chairman Peterson. The Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery met earlier today. The committee approved the June minutes. The committee also reviewed the following item: an ordinance authorizing an agreement with the University of Chicago for bus routes number 171 UFC Hyde Park, number 172 UFC Kenwood, and number 192 University of Chicago Hospital Express. The committee placed this item on the omnibus. The committee recommends approval of the omnibus. And that concludes my report, Chairman Peterson.
Thank you, Director Irvine. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Irvine.
Thank you, Chairman Peterson. The Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier today. The committee approved the June minutes and reviewed the finance report. The committee also reviewed the following items: an ordinance authorizing a co-promotional advertising trade agreement with Bank of America N.A. for the 2018 Bank of America Chicago Marathon, an ordinance authorizing an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Chicago through its Department of Fleet and Facility Management, 2FM, for 2FM to maintain and repair certain authority non-revenue vehicles and lease space at the authority's Beverly Garage, and an ordinance authorizing an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Chicago through its Department of Planning and Development for tax increment financing funds for improvements at the Wilson Station Red Line. The committee placed all these items on the omnibus. The committee recommends approval of the omnibus, and that concludes my report, Chairman Peterson.
Thank you, Director Irvine. I now have a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Irvine.
So moved.
Second.
Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. El Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is the construction report. Carol.
Carol Maury, Chief Infrastructure Officer, and with me for the construction report today is the Vice President of Power and Waste Mobility. Bill is responsible for maintenance and in-house construction for our track, structure, signal, and traction power systems. And with Bob Whitman's
You can speak into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. So with me for the construction report today is Bill Mooney. He's our Vice President of Power and Way, and he's responsible for the maintenance of our track, structure, traction power, and signal systems. And with Bob Whitman's retirement, we've asked Bill to become more involved with the capital construction program, and in particular our Power and Way infrastructure projects, because we feel that his experience in maintenance and in-house construction will help us improve the quality of these projects. So Bill's going to present the construction report on our substations and signal upgrade projects.
Good morning.
Morning.
So the first project I'd like to provide an update on is our East Lake, Milwaukee, and Illinois substation upgrade project. The project scope was to upgrade 3 traction power facilities themselves, as well as all the power distribution equipment from within those facilities. Most of the project activities to date have focused around facade work, landscaping, improvements to masonry and other lighting and painting of the facilities. But as of lately, we've also shifted into a phase that allowed us to prep for the installation of future traction power equipment, as well as witnessing the intense qualification process this equipment goes in its manufacturing. The first picture shows you an example of a courtyard masonry wall over at the Milwaukee substation. And the next one shows you cable racks that are being installed in the sub-basement of Illinois substation. These cable racks will eventually hold cable that connects the various pieces of traction power equipment from one to the other, as well as to our rail network as a whole. The project remains on budget and on schedule. The next project I'd like to provide an update on is our Ravenswood Loop Signal Connector project. This is upgrading one of our legacy signal systems to a modern system in the area between Armitage and Tower 18 on the Brown Line. This project remains tight to schedule, but within budget. Most of the project activities lately have been focused on the future installation of the new relay houses, which present all the logic for the signal system and its operations, as well as installing the wayside apparatuses that communicate with our trains and provide connections to those signals houses. Some examples of this work is this is a lineman performing termination of wiring in a junction box that would provide the connection from the wayside equipment to the signal house itself. And here's an example of an impedance bond, which is what communicates with our trains when they pass over and provides for those authorizations and speed controls.
So I'll report on our 4 station projects currently in active construction. The first is the 95th Terminal Improvement Program. So this project is tight to both budget and schedule, but we're working very closely with the contractor to meet our end-of-year date for completion of the North Terminal. The contractor is close to completing demolition and foundations for the new station canopies to shelter our customers waiting for buses, and we'll begin steel erection later this month. Here's a couple of pictures. So these are the foundations for the canopies on the east side. And here's some additional excavation for drainage structures. So the next project is our Quincy Loop Station upgrade. Work continues on the elevators, the new stairways, and the bridges to connect the elevators with the station. This is primarily an accessibility project. The project is expected to complete by the end of September of this year. So a couple pictures. This is the new exit stair that's required to meet new code. And this is the both the elevator and then also the concrete bridge that connects the elevator with the station. The third project is the Illinois Medical District Rehabilitation Project. This project will renovate and add art to all 3 station houses and also add an elevator to the Ogden Station House. And the project's also expected to complete by the end of September of this year. So here we have the Ogden Station House. This is where the new elevator will be located. You can see the exit stair here. And this is inside the station house, the elevator shaft. We've made further progress since this. These pictures were taken earlier in the month. And the last project is new to this report. It's the Garfield Green Station rehabilitation. So this project includes the renovation of the existing operating station, the historic station across the street, which is original to the 1893 Columbian Exposition. It'll also include architectural lighting of the historic structure over Garfield Boulevard, as well as aesthetic station treatments that are designed by Chicago artist Nick Cave. The project is underway as of late May, and we expect to complete the project by the end of 2018. So again, a couple pictures, again, in the early stages of this project. We'll be, in the previous picture you saw, we'll be installing kind of a temporary entrance in order to facilitate the renovation of the existing entrance. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Carol? All right, seeing none, thank you. Next, Dorval, I think you've got a presentation you want to share with the board.
Yes, I think as a final wrap-up to the construction report, I wanted to actually give the board an opportunity to see a new station that I was pleased to announce with Commissioner Scheinfeld at CDOT earlier this week with the mayor for the new Damon Green Line station that we're going to be constructing in the very near future. I should preface this by those of us who have been around CTA for many years, and myself personally for the last 20 years, have always talked about an infill station at Damon on the Green Line. We actually have a 1.5 mile gap between stations at that location, and this station will actually serve the United Center, but also the industrial corridor right there that we believe is going to take off just like Morgan did when we built that infill station a few years ago. I am very excited about this station for a number of reasons. One, obviously the need to just fill that gap within our system, but also because of the architectural design itself. And you're about to see the design that's been put together by the firm Perkins & Will. Perkins & Will is an international architectural firm, but is based here in Chicago. They have done major transit facilities around the world, but this will be the first one that they've designed in the United States, and we're fortunate to have it being done right here in Chicago. But just as importantly, it makes the type of architectural statement that we've been making with many of our stations, from 95th to Wilson to Washington Wabash, that really sort of addresses the type of cornerstone and gateway foundational piece that we're looking to create with the work that we do these days. And as you saw in a number of the stations we're working on in the construction report, this will be another fine addition to CTA's, architecturally stunning and operationally functional stations within our system. So with that, I'm going to ask staff to roll the video of the station and let you get sort of a bird's eye view of what the station will look like and what the experience will be for people who use it. So construction is going to begin on that station next year. CDOT has already started doing some preliminary work out in that area in anticipation of the station. And I am actually drawing a blank on when the construction will be completed, but it'll take about 18 months to get the construction, the stations
Excellent.
completed.
Looks beautiful.
It is. It's visually stunning. You notice the plaza area in the front, which would be a great opportunity for gathering and particularly when we get crowds that come in for special events at United Center, it has
Right.
the type of space that will allow large crowds to come in and out of that station without creating, choke points or other problems that we have in some of our other stations that are obviously not built to that size.
Excellent. No, thanks
Great.
for sharing that. Greg, is there any new business?
Yes, actually, we're going to bring in the new interns
Okay.
for you guys to speak. I'm asking everybody who's sitting here right now if they would please stand up, go along the wall or the windows or whatever. And Andy, you can open the doors. We'll bring in the interns, and the board and president like to say something. Then after that, we're going to take a photo.
right.
Okay, so why don't we get them all in, and then we can address them.
So these are the One Summer Chicago interns for our One Summer Chicago program. Last year, we had about 80 interns. This year, we boosted the number to 100. So it's the biggest group of interns that we've ever had here at CTA. We wanted to at least give you an opportunity to meet them and to say a few words as they begin their summer program with us here. I should also point out that Geisha Esther and her team in learning support are the ones who actually oversee this program, and Geisha and her team have done a terrific job of both coordinating the program and adding the support services, the mentoring and other things that we do as part of the program over the summer. So once again, she's hit it out of the park in terms of both expanding the program and meeting my goals and objectives around the participation in the program.
That's our guy, Chairman.
All right, all right. Well, let me just say this for the students. First of all, let me just say welcome, and also say to you, I think it's still morning. Good morning to you. For those standing, I'm not going to keep you standing too long, but again, I just want to welcome you to our board meeting as it begins to wrap up, and I also want to say that I hope that during your time here, you're learning a lot about transit, and hopefully in the future, you choose transit as a career. One of the things that I hope you've had an opportunity to witness this summer during your time here is that it's more than just bus drivers and train operators. You've got finance, you've got legal, you've got maintenance, you've got so many facets of transit that sometimes if you don't work inside of it, you really can't appreciate all that goes on to make transit possible. But again, it's a great career. It's an opportunity to give back, make a difference, and it's a career that pays well. So again, I just want to welcome you on behalf of the board. My name is Terry Peterson. I'm board chair. I've been board chair now for almost 8 years. I'm going to have some of the other directors. Let me say what my full-time job is. So when I'm not here at CTA, I'm also the vice president of government affairs at Rush University Medical Center. So I'd like for some of the other directors too to say a little bit about what they do when they're not serving as the role of director. And my job basically outside of transit is working at all levels of government around legislation and healthcare policy. So that's the other thing I do besides being chairman of the board of CTA.
Hi, everybody. This is a good-looking crew, by the way.
Absolutely.
Great-looking
Absolutely.
crew. So my name is Arabelle Alva-Rosales, and I'm actually vice chairman of the board, and I'm an entrepreneur. I own a technology firm that I've had for well over 12 years. And then I do something, I have a passion project that's actually a business. So I do something also called Latino Fashion Week. So as you can see, you can have a diverse life and a successful life as well. But I'm very excited for all of you because since I've gotten on the board, I've always been fascinated with transportation because we're such a central part at the life of a city. So you're going to learn a lot, and hopefully we'll get to see some of you be so excited about transportation that you'll get more involved. So thanks for being here.
Hi, everyone. It's fantastic to see you all here. I'm Kevin Irvine, and I've been on the CTA board for about 6.5 years. But before that, I'm a disability rights advocate, so I have been advocating for equal access for people with disabilities to the CTA for almost 20 years, and but doing it from the board position for the last 6.5. I'm also a dad. I've got a 12-year-old daughter in CPS going into 7th grade, and I've raised her on the CTA. We live in Albany Park, and so she's grown up taking the buses and trains, and this year started taking the train to and from school by herself. So I'm a transit advocate. I'm also a transit rider and raising the next generation of transit riders. And I hope you are all riding the buses and trains, and we'll see you out there. So thanks so much, and have a great summer.
Thank you. I'm Johnny Miller, pastor of Mount Vernon Baptist Church on the west side, and president of JLM Community Center. And thank you all, great-looking group, and we say congratulations and wishing for you the best of the summer. You are the group who are going to help bring changes to CTA. Need your minds, and we just say welcome and congratulations to you.
Andrew?
My name is Andre Youngblood. I am currently the Midwest Director of Engineering Lines for HDI Global. And what I do to keep food on the table is that I ensure railroads, dams, bridges, and also railroads. So go figure. I'm impressed by the group. I'm also a member of the 100 Black Men of Chicago, so we mentor large groups similar to what we have here in this room. And one takeaway I want you guys to do is to learn about each other, because maybe 10 years down the line, you may see the person that you're sitting or standing next to working in a similar position. So learn as much as you can about CTA in this short period of time, because you may be sitting in this seat pretty soon.
All right, with that, I think we're going to take, I don't know, Dorval, you want to say anything? Have you spoken to the group?
No. I'm the president and CEO of the Chicago Transit Authority. My job is to make sure everybody else that you just mentioned is happy. But no, I've got over 30 years in the industry, and have grew up in Chicago, took CTA buses and trains when I was a kid and into my adult life, and now have found myself in the probably dream job of my entire career, which is running CTA. I started off here as a staff attorney 30 years ago, and have now moved all the way up to be the president and CEO of this agency. So I'm here to tell you basically that your dreams can come true if you work hard and you pursue them. I'm excited to have all of you here. I should point out that Geisha Esther, who's the person that runs this program, met with me about 2 months ago and told me that she thought she might get close to 90 interns for this summer program. And I basically said, 90? No, we got to hit 100. And Geisha delivered on that for me. And I view this as a wonderful opportunity for you to get to know CTA, but also a wonderful opportunity for you to get some real career job experience, to be able to use that experience for whatever it is that you decide to do going forward. So my only request of you is to take advantage of this opportunity, ask a lot of questions. If you see me in the hallway or on the street somewhere, say hello. I'm a very friendly person. I always like to talk to people who work for CTA, and I wish you all the success this summer, and I hope you enjoy yourselves.
All right, with that, Greg, what do you want us to line up?
Well, we need to do before that, we need to adjourn this meeting, then we're going to take a photo. I think we have to move that. So let's adjourn the meeting, then we'll get all that going.
All right, so with no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, Helmut, tell us what you want us to do.
Okay, let's have board members and president right between the flags.